Barbarous are a common foe most people will encounter very early on in their adventuring career. There are numerous species of Barbarous found all across Rexia. They are often depicted as savages that will not shy away from murdering, plundering, or even eating humanoids. Along with their often monstrous appearance, they make easy bad guys for all humanoid adventurers. However, things are rarely as black and white as they first seem. In this video, we want to highlight some details about Barbarous that might just change your mind about them. There are two major factors that puts humanoids and Barbarous at odds: history and culture. Before we can highlight their culture, first, we need to talk about history. Barbarous came to be during the War of the Gods. Dulcrim and his compatriots sought to bolster their forces. They found out that, by twisting the soul of a humanoid, they could grant them immense power. This process would change humanoid physiology in drastic ways, and so, they created the first Barbarous. As a side effect, of course, this new being would have a soul with scars. Thus, the first Barbarous were born. Dulcrim's forces, now consisting of Barbarous, clashed with the humanoid forces of Lyphos. After the war, the gods vanished from Rexia, and Barbarous were left to fend for themselves, just as the humanoids were. Humanoids managed to create their magical empire around this time, giving birth to the Durandal civilization. The wizards of the Durandal civilization began to mass-produce copies of the Swords of Genesis that, although weaker than the originals by far, managed to drive back the Barbarous so humanoids could flourish. Following the fall of this civilization due to various factors, not least of which were demons, there is a several century-long gap where basically nothing is known. I like to call it the Lost Age. It is safe to assume both sides had their work cut out for themselves, what with all the demons running around. Be that as it may, soon enough, the Magi-Tech civilization rose up, and with their mighty Magi-Tech, they managed to drive most of the Barbarous underground. All that would change with the rise of a new king, some 300 years ago, and the dawn of the diabolic triumph. Barbarous tribes united under the king, stormed the surface, and destroyed the Magi-Tech civilization. Since then, after the king fell, Barbarous have been scattered all across Rexia, and humanoids started to rebuild. As you can see, Barbarous and humanoids have always been at war. Sometimes in smaller scale conflicts, sometimes on a global scale. All this history of conflict may give you an idea of how their culture was shaped and formed. Barbarous, being created using the powers of the second sword, hold freedom in the highest regard, to the point of anarchy, one could argue. While there is a sort of hierarchy that forms among the Barbarous, it is a hierarchy that is determined by force. The weak have to obey the strong, lest they be crushed. Strength is all important to Barbarous. Of course, the most ruthless and brutal naturally rise to the top, which means one might say evil individuals have the most say. So it is only natural that many terrible things are committed by Barbarous, especially towards humanoids, their fated enemy. In short, Barbarous are a people that knew only war, that have known nothing but conflict for the 10,000 odd years they have inhabited Rexia, and whose culture would only allow for more conflict. That being said, it doesn't always have to be this way. While it is true that the majority of Barbarous are best summed up as, well, barbaric, not all Barbarous are quote-unquote evil. First of all, the 2.0 supplements Barbarous Book and Barbarous Tales both have playable Barbarous races. The major kicker here is that Barbarous Tales includes a history table, much like the ones you use for humanoid PCs, but this one is specifically for Barbarous that live within humanoid society. Barbarous Book later reprinted this table alongside one for Barbarous PCs in Barbarous Society. Barbarous Book also includes a lengthy section on the do's and don'ts of playing a Barbarous PC in a humanoid campaign, setting a clear precedent for this sort of thing. Some races are more suited to live among humanoids by their nature. Lamia need humanoids as they have to drink blood to survive. While they have more parasitic relationship, it is not unthinkable that some Lamias live alongside humanoids that would willingly give some of their blood so the Lamia could survive. They actually only need a very small amount of blood, so it's very much possible for them to live in harmony with humanoids. Kobolds, being at the bottom of barbarous society, often find their way into humanoid society one way or the other. While some work as spies for their barbarous masters, some come to shed their shackles. They are often viewed with suspicion, but clearly, there are some that just try to make an earnest living. Weaklings are often ousted by their tribes, so it is likely that they may seek better lives among humanoids. Their barbarous traits aren't as pronounced, so they can more easily fit in. Similar things could be said for dampers and broken drakes, too. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list. Beyond player characters, there have been a few instances in the lore where Barbarous have lived with humanoids in peace. In the Forbidden region, there exists a school that teaches a unique fighting style. The central concept is using one's soul scars to empower your strikes. It was founded by a dark troll named Dagger. He aided humanoids, fighting off mighty barbarous foes. In his own words, he wanted to fight stronger opponents, so instead of fighting humanoids, he chose to protect them from the barbarous instead. He does so to this very day, I believe. He even took in a young dwarven girl that had been revived as a child and thus was ousted by other humanoids because of her soul scars. Forbidden also features a domain ruled by a nightmare where barbarous are welcome and worship of the second sword is common. In fact, barbarous even fight crime in this domain to prove their willingness to improve conditions in the domain. Another example of humanoids and barbarous living together came from the Magi Tech period of all times. During that time, barbarous were mostly driven underground, and many believed them to be an endangered species of sorts. The Lyphosria Federation took it upon themselves to protect barbarous, preserving them. Moreover, they started active communication with these tribes and soon started to help them integrate into humanoid society, allowing them to prosper. While there were some restrictions placed on some races, like ogres and lamia, they mostly gained full citizenship. Ultimately, this endeavor ended in tragedy as the Federation crumbled during the Diabolic Triumph, but I think it sets an example of barbarous being very much able to coexist with humans peacefully, given the right circumstances. It was simply not meant to be in this instance. Oh, and of course, there is also the Rendrift Empire. It's one of the few places on Rexia where barbarous and humanoids just flat-out coexist in mutual respect. I will not excuse the Empire's expansionist tendencies, however I believe they don't invalidate my point. Humanoids are perfectly capable of creating expansionist empires, with or without barbarous in their ranks. Rendrift is but one of the countries where barbarous and humanoids coexist. Other places may be more peaceful than this. Take for example the Rajarhar Empire, found in the Burlife region on the Alflame continent. Worship of Grandpa Grendel. I mean, the Blazing Emperor's worship is widespread here. While it isn't the de facto state religion, it is by far the most common. Perhaps in part because Grendel also receives plenty of worship from them, Rajarhar's population includes a sizable number of barbarous. Most of them are broken drakes and kobold, but other races like lizardmen and medusa are also found here. The nation is very meritocratic in nature. People are judged on their achievements rather than their soul scars. Many barbarous earn their status as honorary humanoids, which surprises a lot of travelers visiting Rajarhar. While the country is very militaristic, they use their military might to fend off invasions from the north, while they have open trade relations with many other countries of the region. There is even a train line that recently opened up. Many believe that Rajarhar may become one of the main relay stations, which is sure to boost the country's economy, solidifying their position on an international level. There are, of course, a lot of problems like bandits and hostile Barbarous, but with Rajar's military might, I'm sure they will eventually manage to sort this out. The most exciting prospect in this regard is that if Rajar becomes a major player on a large scale, other countries may also become more open to the idea of incorporating Barbarous into their citizenry. Just some food for thought. Players coming from Western games to Sword World, mostly players used to the D&D way of doing things, may come to expect something like an alignment system. Alignment brings a sort of totality to morality, the existence of absolute good and absolute evil, because if you are gonna map good and evil onto a compass, there needs to be an absolute. Now, while alignment shifts do occur, they are rare and made out to be very dramatic. It is easy to assume that Barbarous would fit the mold of a chaotic evil enemy. However, of course, alignments are not a thing in Sword World. There is no absolute evil and absolute good. I would argue that Barbarous are more victims of circumstance than anything.
But Barbarous are evil.
Now, I am not trying to say that Barbarous did nothing wrong. There were a lot of terrible things committed by them, and there still are. For some good examples of how heinous Barbarous can be, read the Mist Castle campaign book. It is some of the most bone-chilling stuff I have ever read. However, it is easy to see how they ended up like this. They may make for an easy bad guy, but maybe they are a little more than just bad guys. Sometimes, they may play nice and manage to coexist with humanoids, even. Personally, I like my boy Dalcrim's creations. Barbarous are cool. Sure, many of them raise, murder, and plunder. That's no doubt bad. But I like a good underdog story, and Barbarous trying to turn their lives around by trying to make it in a humanoid society. That's an underdog story. I like how they aren't just made out to be evil for no reason, there are reasons how they came to be this way. It's great. Now, I believe I have gone on long enough. I am sure Cardia wants her spot back that I so rudely took for however long this video was. What?
I hold the belief that the Barbarous races are inherently evil. They were transformed into hideous forms by the power of the second sword, Ignis, and their souls have been deeply scarred. I'm convinced that the Barbarous revel in destruction and slaughter, and their nature is to plunder and devour humanoids. I see them as a severe threat to the harmony of the world and the—
What did you just say? What
Listen
in the
to me,
creator's name did you
children
just
of
say about
Lifos.
me, you piece of scrap metal?
Hey!
This mega record.
One at the time. Feel free to check our subreddit or Discord server for more info about the system and our translation. Links are in the description below. Thanks for watching. The Sword World Translation Project is a fan-based, non-profit translation. Sword World is owned by Group SNE and Kadokawa. Please support the official release. All the Sword World books can be found on Bookwalker, links in the description below.
I'm afraid I will be removing you along with all of your records unless you can somehow start making better content, you Barbarous apologist.